I'm making this video as a little bit of a reminder to my future self, but I've been pretty good. I actually haven't bought gear for the last 3 years or so. I've only bought a couple of pieces, a camera, a couple other lenses, but everything else you see is 3 years or older. Now, I wanted to make this video because this is the problem that I see in the industry, in the indie filmmaking industry and in the video production industry where people are doing this for corporate and commercial work. They continue to buy gear with every dollar of profit that they get, thinking that the gear makes them a better filmmaker or makes them more profitable in their video production company. And I did this for 10 years. I thought the exact same thing. Every year and every December, I bought as much gear as I could so I could bring my profit down to almost nothing so I could not pay any taxes because I didn't really make any profit and I wrote off whatever gear I bought. That's a big mistake. As soon as I stopped doing this, not only did I make more money, I was also able to work on projects that I really wanted to. And the way I did that is when I got projects that required gear I didn't have. Instead of going to buy that piece of gear, I rented that piece of gear. Now, a lot of projects, I had the piece of gear, so that did help. But by the time you pay off a camera, for example, doing projects with that specific camera, that camera is worth nothing, and you'd be lucky even if you paid it off at that point. Now, let me break this down into 4 different points that I want to make in this video to show you what to do instead of buying gear and why I think it will be helpful to you. Now, at the end of the video, if you think some of these are not for you, that's fine. I just want to put it out there so you don't get into this world of basically managing your gear full time and not really focusing on your business or your filmmaking skills. Now, I do think you should have some gear depending on what you want to do in the world of filmmaking. For example, if you want to be a professional cinematographer and really excel in cinematography, or if you want to run a video production company or turn yourself into a video production company, I think you should have a set of essential gear. And what do I mean by essential gear? I'm going to put a list in the description below this video, but I'll point out some of the things that I think every filmmaker should have if that's their goal. If you're trying to make indie movies, I think you should find someone that is in this boat and that has a set of gear that could help you so you could invest your money in the actual movie and not in the actual equipment. You could definitely find someone that's passionate enough to help you in the world of filmmaking. So what are the essential things every filmmaker should have? This is how I got started 14 years ago. The first thing is a relatively inexpensive but high quality camera. With client work specifically, I know nowadays 4K and 6K are required by a lot of different clients in the world of commercial and corporate work. In the world of filmmaking too, you may want to go that route of shooting higher resolution. By inexpensive, I mean instead of buying a $10,000 camera or a $50,000 Red, I'm talking about buying a camera for about $2,000 because remember, the camera body itself is not the whole game. You're going to have to get other things that I'm going to mention as well. So here, this is one of the cameras I bought last year. I haven't bought anything since I bought this camera, and this was my only purchase last year. And the main reason I bought this camera is because I wanted to have one camera that was 6K. Now, the mistake I made is I didn't get rid of anything else, and I'll talk about that in another tip. So camera body is what I recommend as the first thing you could buy if you could afford it. Do some freelance work if you can't, save up, and then you could buy a camera body. Again, you could buy these for relatively inexpensive. This one is $2,000 for the body, but by the time you really build it out, it does add up a little bit more. So I have an external hard drive here that it records to, a set of cards that you need to buy, those could be expensive, a cage so you could be more versatile in the different environments that you shoot. And the next thing is you need to buy one all-in-one lens. What do I mean by all-in-one? This is the one I mean. This is a Canon 24-105 f4 with image stabilizer. This is the ultimate workhorse. I don't know how many of these I have. I have one for pretty much every camera that is EF mount, and even the Sony cameras, I still bought an adapter to use these lenses so I didn't have to buy Sony specific lenses. So I recommend using this. I remember even back in the day, before I was able to afford this, I bought a 50mm lens and I shot everything with that. It was difficult because the zoom lens gives you more options. You could get wide, you could get tights, all in one lens. So camera body, memory card, batteries, then the lens. And I always recommend you buy a nice set of tripods. Now that could be expensive too, but this one, for example, that's more like a $7,000 tripod. I didn't buy this for years, for maybe 10 years, but I know this is a lifetime purchase. This could last me 20, 30 years. So when I started, I bought cheaper tripods for a few $100s and then upgraded from there over time. Again, I made a mistake of not getting rid of my older tripod, so now I have 8, 9 tripods that I don't need. I only use 1 or 2. So now you have a camera with a lens ready to shoot with a tripod. The next item that comes in really handy is just a basic LED light kit. Now that's another thing that I invested money on over time, but lighting did change over time, at least in the last 15 years or so, when I was spending more money on lights that were tungsten hot lights, and now they're more LED based, and I even had fluorescence in between that. So they do change. They're not going to be an investment that's going to last you forever. But I do recommend you buy a relatively decent light kit. Again, everything that I'm going to recommend, specific brands I'm going to leave in the description below this video. And the last thing, depending on what you're doing, if you're a filmmaker or if you're trying to be an indie filmmaker, I don't recommend this. But if you're trying to be an all-in-one video team or a video production company, the next thing you want to buy is one of these lavalier mics. And this is the one I recommend here. And I have multiple sets because, you know, for things that require 2 or 3 people, you may want to put a lavalier mic on all of them. And what's nice about the lavalier mic is you could now do everything as a solo team, all by yourself. You don't need a sound person. Although I recommend as you go higher and higher in video productions, always hire a sound person is what I do. But when I started out and I had to do everything and I had to figure out how to make money, those are the exact order of things that I bought as I saved more and more money. And then eventually at that point, I decided to buy more things like more prime lenses, more zoom lenses, more cameras. And let's get to tip number 2, which is all about that point. When you think your gear is out of date, this is what you need to do. For example, if I'm using this C300, at some point I realized this 1080p camera is no longer what the clients are requiring, and I need to go to a 4K camera. So I switched from that into a Sony camera. Actually, the Sony FS5 I think I bought first. That's the one I'm shooting this video on. And then I bought a couple of these other Sony FS7s. But here's where I made the biggest mistake. I should have sold at that time that C300. Now, I have 3 or 4 of those type of cameras, and I still have them because I didn't sell them when they had some value. Now I'm not gonna get much money for them, so I basically keep them for these type of YouTube videos or props or things like that, which is a little bit depressing. I should have sold them when they had value when 4K first came out. When you feel like your gear is obsolete, and this really only happens with camera bodies, and then every several years it might happen to your lighting or audio or even lenses. But some of these lenses I've had for 10 or 12 years. This one of these I'm sure I've had for 10 years and it works just fine. So camera bodies, make sure you sell them when they're out of date and then buy the new one, or buy the new one and sell the old one, whichever order works for your project workflow. And in the meantime, you could rent. I know people always hesitate about renting because, you know, it does create a little bit of work of having to go pick up that piece of gear, but it lets you get the exact right gear for the right job. So don't think of renting as a way that you're losing money in some way. It's just a great way to save up for the right piece of gear. Now, the next point is, this is the best thing I ever did, and it's learning marketing. Now, it doesn't matter if you're trying to be an indie filmmaker working your way up to the Hollywood system. It doesn't matter if you're a cinematographer. It doesn't matter if you're just a person trying to be an all-in-one production company. Marketing is key. It lets you really be above just about the whole field of cinematographers and filmmakers. The reason is most cinematographers and filmmakers are creative people. So they want to work on their craft. They don't want to learn marketing. They don't want to learn how to run a business. So if you learn it and you learn advertising and Facebook ads and YouTube ads, and LinkedIn ads and the way that you go about getting clients changes compared to everyone else, you just move up the ranks. It's really simple. I don't know why people really try to stay away from it, and they get their clients from word of mouth or different websites where you could literally turn on a marketing machine to get clients or to get your film noticed. That's another part. If you're an indie filmmaker, most people throw their movie on YouTube and it just disappears there, or they go after distribution for 2 years. I did it myself with a documentary film, a feature-length documentary film. I went through every distribution company and eventually got distribution, but it wasn't the cut that I was looking for and it was a mess. And I wish I knew marketing back then so I could self-distribute the film or use my marketing skills to find the right distributor. I missed on all that because I took too long to learn marketing. But once I did, I've never really looked back. I've only worked on projects that I really care about. Now, the next tip is, instead of buying gear, if you have any piece of gear, master that piece of gear. I promise you, most filmmakers that I come across are obsessed with the latest piece of gear. They want to go to NAB and see what comes out and even buy it there. They want to know what Red has, what Arri has, what Sony has, what Canon has. The problem with all that is they keep buying the next piece of gear and never learn the piece of gear they have at the moment. Even the next piece of gear they bought, another shiny object shows up and they never learn the one they have. I've mastered the C300. I've mastered the C100. I've mastered the FS7. I've mastered the 6K Blackmagic Pocket Cam. Any camera, even this my original camera, the 5D, I mastered this camera. I used this for 2 years and nothing else and got plenty of work with just having this camera and one lens. That's a long time ago, but I'm making the point that if you master the gear you have, the final product will be much, much better than if you had the best piece of gear in the world. If you look online to some of the GoPro videos or some of the iPhone videos, you'll notice some of the cinematography is mind-blowing. How do they do that? Well, they mastered that piece of gear and they mastered being cinematographers and they mastered their skill. They didn't continue to look for the next piece of gear. Now, I'm putting together a course that I want to walk you through exactly how to master filmmaking, but also how to master marketing and making money in the world of filmmaking. I feel like there is a gap there. For some reason, everyone's obsessed with equipment and cinematography and getting the most cinematic footage and learning some color correction and editing and Premiere and DaVinci. But then they skip the whole part of actually getting work and getting clients and getting their film discovered and marketing. I really wanted to put a course that combines the two. So as you go through it, you master the art of cinematography, the master the art of editing, the storytelling and filmmaking. And then on the second half, you master figuring out how to make money with this craft. Now, when I first learned marketing and really took this step, it completely changed everything. It quadrupled my income from 1 year to the next. So that's why I really wanted to put this course together. Now it's going to take me some time. So if you're interested in that, I have a link in the description of this video to an email list, and I'm going to send you a discount code before anyone else gets access to the course. Thanks again for all your time. Again, review some of the things we talked about in the description of this video or rewatch this video, but take some of it to heart, and I hope some of it was helpful to you. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.